Hey, what's up? Mirai here and welcome to another ISBoxer tutorial. In this video, I'm going to be showing how to set up a window layout using both dxNothing and VFX. And it's been broken up into multiple sections depending on what you want to watch. You can either enable YouTube annotations or just navigate to the time listed under the section you want to watch, or just watch it all because it's super informative. Now, the first part is going to cover how to set up the foundation of a VFX window layout. The second part will further tweak the same layout and show how to truly mimic the behavior of a standard window layout. And the third and final section covers some miscellaneous information related to VFX window layouts. I'd also like to throw out a disclaimer stating that if you're not familiar with both dxNothing and VFX, then I suggest you take a moment to learn the basics of those two features and how they work. And you can find links for those in the description. And if you'd like to look at the ISBoxer profile that I'm using throughout this video, there will be a link in the description for that as well. Enjoy. Window layouts that utilize dxNothing can vary greatly depending on the player or even the game, but I'm going to keep it simple by showing how to replicate a standard window layout that has 6 regions like this one here. So, rather than start fresh with an empty profile, I'm going to be altering an existing character set. I started with a 5-man character set and I modified it by adding a slot and then adding the dxNothing character into that slot. Doing this automatically invalidated my current window layout because I now have more slots than I currently have regions for, and ISBoxer will complain about it when I go to export. So, in order to fix that, I'm going to need a new window layout. And while there are a few ways to go about this, I'm just going to use the window layout wizard because it's the most straightforward method. I'm going to choose the stacked full screen preset because it gives a good starting point for what I want. I'll give it a useful name, and that's it. Now, I said I wanted to replicate this layout, which means I'll be using it as sort of a template, and I'll need to take some measurements and grab some values from it. These 5 regions at the bottom are where my VFX viewers are going to be, and that means this is where the dxNothing window needs to be placed. I already know the width of my display is 2560, and the remaining height of this area is the same as these smaller regions down here, which is 240. So my dxNothing window is going to be 2560 by 240. That means my 5 game clients will all stay stacked on top of each other in the remaining area of my monitor up here, which is 2560 by 1200. And I'm going to copy this value so that I can use it in the other layout. Alright, so with these 2 values, I can get started with making changes to my new window layout. By default, my game clients, slots 1 through 5, are assigned to regions 1 through 5, which means they all need to be set to 2560 by 1200. Now, if you're entering the width and height values of each region manually, you need to make sure that you're separating the values with a comma rather than an X, or else you'll get an error. And region 6 is the dxNothing window, and that's going to be 2560 by 240. It also needs to have the always on top mode changed to be if a game window is foreground, and it's going to be placed at the bottom. Alright, well, let me export this, launch the character set, and then we'll get started on the next bit, which is putting the VFX into place. So here's the window layout that I just created in action, and again, the bottom area here is my blank dxNothing window where the VFX viewers are going to sit. So, back in ISBoxer, I'll create a new mapped key in my always on key map. And I'm putting it in always on because I always want to have access to it even when my mapped keys are toggled off. This is just a personal preference of mine. I'll add a VFX action to it, and in this VFX action, I need to give it a target, which is going to be my dxNothing window, because that's obviously where I want the VFX viewer to be placed. I also need to give it a name, and I'll start with IS1. Remember, I don't have to create any sources for my viewers because ISBoxer automatically generates full client sources named IS1, IS2, IS3, etc. based on how many slots the character set has. So now it needs a position and a size, but how do I know what these are going to be? Well, I can either take a guess, export to see what it looks like, and then adjust it from there, or I can take a look at the other window layout I was originally using as a template. The 5 smaller regions at the bottom of this layout are all 512 by 240, so that's the size I'm going to be using for each viewer. They're also spaced out exactly how I need them to be, so I can just look at each of their locations to figure out their position. But in this case, I only need the X value. I ignore the Y value because it's based off the top of this display, and the top of this display is way up here. That's why this value is 1200. In the new layout, the viewers are going to be positioned relative to the dxNothing region, and on the dxNothing region, they're going to have a Y value of 0 because they're going to be placed at the top of it. So looking back at the template layout, I can see what X values I'm going to be using, starting with 0, 512, 1024, 1536, and 2048. Each one is 512 pixels further to the right than the prior because that's the width of the region/viewer. Now I can take this information back to the VFX action I was editing before and plug it all in. And here are what the finished VFX actions look like. All right, so now I can export this, let everything refresh, and see how it looks. And it looks great. I can still swap between windows using my hotkeys I had originally assigned, and I can use my VFX Focus hotkey to swap via the VFX viewers. And this is how you set up a basic window layout using VFX. Feel free to check out the next section of this video, which will show how to further tweak your VFX layout in order to make it function more like an actual window layout. And don't forget that this profile is linked in the video description below if you want to check it out. When creating a window layout using VFX, there are generally two aspects of it you're trying to replicate: look and function. It's easy to create a VFX layout which looks like an ordinary window layout, but getting it to function the same way usually takes a bit more effort and maybe a little creativity as well. So looking at these two layouts side by side, you'll notice that the VFX layout isn't exactly functioning like the wizard generated layout. The layout which the wizard created included an option called Leave a Hole, which does just that. It leaves a hole in the layout to indicate which slot you're currently playing from. Now, whenever you're trying to animate a layout or move VFX viewers around in order to make it look like the regions of the layout are actually swapping, you need to think about how many different states the layout could end up in. Generally, it's going to be the same number as game clients in your character set, but depending on your layout and what you want to do with it, this may not always be the case. Now, looking at these shows me that I have to configure 5 different states where the VFX viewers in the dxNothing window need to mimic a missing slot. This means I'll need to create 5 different mapped keys to reflect each individual state. And I'm not going to configure these one by one on screen, but here you can see what each mapped key looks like. Using a set of VFX actions, you'll notice that I'm not only destroying the viewer of the current slot, I'm also recreating the other viewers to make sure that they're always present. This ensures that none of the VFX viewers fall out of sync. But now the question is, what do I do with these? How does ISBoxer know when to use these mapped keys based on when I swap? Well, under each slot of your character set, there is an option to perform a mapped key when you swap over to it. So I've got my 5 mapped keys, one for each slot with a game client in it, and I'm assigning them accordingly. All right, so let me export this and show how this looks in action. And there you have it. A VFX layout which looks and acts just like a standard wizard-generated window layout. Again, if you'd like to get a closer look at this ISBoxer profile, then there's a link to a stripped-down version of it in the description of this video. When setting up a mapped key to execute upon swap, you may encounter that you've already got something assigned there. For example, it's likely that World of Warcraft players will already have a Jamba Master mapped key occupying this spot. If this is the case, continue assigning the slot-specific mapped keys for swapping as shown earlier in this video. But this now means you'll need to go back into each of these slot-specific mapped keys and add an additional action to them. In the case of World of Warcraft players, you'll want to add a DoMapped key action and assign the Jamba Master mapped key with a target of window current. Do this for each of the slot-specific mapped keys, and you'll be all set. Another helpful tip when creating a VFX layout is to add the mapped key, which initially creates the video effects to execute when you launch your character set. When you've got your character set selected in ISBoxer, you'll see an option to perform a mapped key when the character set is loaded or reloaded in the bottom right pane. Go ahead and add that mapped key with a target of window current, and this will conveniently populate your dxNothing window with the VFX viewers from the start. And that's it for creating window layouts based around video effects. For any further questions, comments, or concerns, please visit the ISBoxer forum or the live chat.